All right, so I just started recording and I'm going to share my screen. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
All right, perfect. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Owens. I'm one of the assistant principals here at Mason Creek Middle School, and I'm going to talk to you guys about GMAS, our state mandated test. It's called the Georgia Milestones Assessment System. And as Dr. Weaver stated at the end, if you stay at the end of the meeting, we will be able to answer some of your questions. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight is what is GMAS. I'll give you some test dates and some test times. I will talk to you guys about some question types, some ways that we can prepare or that you can help your students prepare, some test taking tips, and what the test day is going to look like. All right, so to begin, the purpose of GMAS is to provide us with information about how well your students are mastering the contents that we're teaching them in our classes. It also provides students with critical information about their own achievement and their readiness for the next level of learning. So to break that down a little bit, so the different levels of GMAS, they are rated based on a criteria of how well they are able to do on the assessment. For example, if a student is a level 1, that basically says that they're going to have some struggles inside of the next grade, and there needs to be some kind of remediation. If they're a level 2, they are closer to being on pace and on track, but a level 3 says that they will be successful, and a level 4 that says they are ready to rock and roll for the next grade, and even beyond their other peers. It also informs parents, educators, and the public of how well students are learning important content. The parents and the public and policymakers, including local school district boards of education, can use the results to adjust instructional practices. So what that means for us inside of our building, we utilize the GMAS data a lot, and we determine where teachers are placed, what are some methods that we utilize to educate our students. So as far as the test dates, we will begin our first section of testing on Monday, the 28th, which is this Monday. It came by really, really fast. So we have English Language Arts section 1, and that'll be for all grades. That'll be 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. So on Tuesday, April 29th, we will have 2 parts. So between each section, they'll get a break, and that'll be section 2 and 3 of English Language Arts. And I'll talk to you guys about what all of those tests entails. And again, that is for 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. On Wednesday, April 30th, we have our math, and we have that sections 1 and 2 as well, and that's for all grades. But then on Monday, we only have our 8th grade test, and that is our science, and that's on Monday, May 5th. And on Tuesday, May 6th, we have our social studies. Again, that is 8th grade only. And then on Wednesday, we have Algebra 1, and that is for our Algebra 1 students, and that is an EOC, which is end of course test, because those Algebra 1 students get high school credits for taking that test. On Thursday and Friday of both weeks, the first week and the second week, we have something we like to call makeups. That's if a student was not here or they had an illness during the day and they were not able to complete that test. So our makeups are May 1st and May 2nd. And on the second week, it will be May 8th and May 9th. Although we have makeup days, we want to encourage all of our kids to be here at school to take the assessment with their peers. Next, I'll talk to you a little about what are some things that you or your students will see on the math assessment. Again, this is for all grades. Calculators, they will have no access to handheld calculators. But the great thing about that, we have something that's called Desmos calculators, and they're embedded inside of the test. They will have access to the calculator the entire time, which is great because it changed previously, they will have no calculator for one of the sections, but this time they have calculators all the time. As far as the sections, the typical testing time is about 30 to 50 minutes for each section. But although students usually finish a little earlier than the maximum time of 65 minutes, they can finish whenever they want to. So for example, if a student finishes within 20 minutes, they're able to finish, the testing session is ended. But again, they have up to 65 minutes unless they have an IEP or some kind of accommodation that says that they can get additional time to complete. So the total testing time for both sessions is about 130 minutes for a general ed student. And if you look to the right of the screen, I copied and pasted a typical kind of problem that you would see on the assessment. I'm not going to go over it. You guys can read what it looks like. So basically just a similar question, a word problem that they'll get some data, and then they'll just simply answer with the A, B, C, or D choice. On the English language arts, there are 3 parts, as I said earlier. And again, that's all grades. The first part is reading and evidence, and they have evidence-based writing. So they'll be doing some kind of extended writing based off a topic that they see. So they'll read a topic or read a passage, and then they'll write based on what evidence or what claims they read inside of that. As far as part 2 and part 3, it'll be short answer and multiple choice, multi-select, etc. So for example, short answer, they'll have to explain what a particular question or a particular answer is. It can be a short word. Say, for instance, they might ask a question about what a passage says. The students will create an answer about a sentence or two, or even a word. As far as multiple choice, A, B, C, or D, and then multi-select. So they might have options, and they say, hey, which of these are the best? And then they'll click multiple options. For these 3 assessments, the typical testing times ranges from about 40 to 65 minutes. As you can see, they have day 1 is a little longer. The max testing time for that section is about 90 minutes. And again, that is the reading, the passage, and then writing based off what they read. And here's an example of a sample task. As you can see on the left-hand side, there's a passage that I was referring to. And then on the right-hand side, they will have a prompt. For example, this one says, type an informational explanatory essay explaining what leaders should consider to encourage successful group problem solving. So as you can see on there's something that is called a writer's checklist. And this is basically a checklist that students have the ability to go through and make sure they have everything that makes a great writing. And here's an example of what that writer's checklist looks like. So if you go back to the question that we saw, the student will make a claim based off the prompt, and then they will go down to make sure they have every part of what it says on this writer's checklist. And then at the bottom, it tells them, it says, now write your argumentative essay on your answer document. And they will type this. All right, so on part 2 and part 3, here's an example of what they may see. Again, they'll just read a simple question, and then they will answer A, B, C, or D based on what they just read. Moving on to science. As you recall, this is for 8th grade only. And some examples of problems are on the left-hand side. You can see that there are a model of an electromagnetic wave from the sun. And what the student will have to do, they will go and basically answer the question. It says, what is and then there's a blank that they have to put in there. And then if you go back to the bottom, it says distance between the point, and then they'll fill in that blank as well. And if you go to the right-hand side, there are some illustrations that students will look at, and then they will simply select A, B, C, or D based on their answer choice. As you can see, the science is a shorter test. It's about 20 to 30 minutes, and the max time for those tests are about 40 minutes for a max time of 80 minutes. Moving on to social studies, 8th grade as well. Sample problems at the top. And the typical testing time on this one is a little shorter as well. The minimum time, well, there's no minimum time, but the typical testing time is 15 to 25 minutes. And the max time for a general ed student will be 35 minutes for a total time of 70 minutes of testing. So as far as preparation of what Mason Creek does to prepare your students, obviously there's daily instruction in the classrooms. The students will be using Chromebooks, and the Chromebooks, they're something that they're familiar with to take the assessment. The Desmos calculators, they're online calculators, and we encourage our math teachers to utilize those calculators often so that our students will know how to use that for the test. We also encourage our teachers to use a platform that is presented by the district titled Illuminate. And what that does, it allows our students to see the typical structure of a question that they would see on the GMAS assessment. Also, we have the Beacon assessment. The Beacon assessment is an assessment, a diagnostic that we have 3 times a year. We start in August when they first get here to school, and then the next one is in December, and then we have a March window. And what we do is we break down that data to basically adjust and adapt instruction. The great thing about this test, they will see things that are very, very similar to GMAS because it is the exact same platform. It has the same test structure. And the biggest thing about that, it builds their stamina to be prepared to take GMAS. We also have a diagnostic program titled iReady. The great thing about this is that it is personalized learning. And what that means, it's adaptive lessons and assessments. So whatever level your student is on, they will receive personalized instruction. And then we also have writing assessments that are very, very similarly tied to what they'll see on GMAS. And we have multiple avenues of remediation. For example, we have math tutoring. We have a tutor inside our building to where students will take time out of their connections. They'll go 2 times a week. They start with by taking a benchmark, and those kids will be placed in those math tutoring classes if they met the criteria. And as they take, maybe say for instance, going from our PE class, they'll go to math tutoring 2 times a week for personalized instruction. And then they're actually taking their next benchmark right now to see where they are from the beginning of the year to now. I'm really excited about where our kids are. We also have reading connections, and how students get in reading connections. Again, that's another version of remediation for our students. We use Beacon assessments, we use iReady, and we break down that data and put students in reading connections based on their needs. And we also have something that we call preparing the pack. Again, at Mason Creek, we are very intentional with our preparation as far as preparing our students for the next grade and GMAS. But preparing the pack is a time to where students take, we did it for 8 days. Again, we use data to create groups, and they come back during one of their connection periods, and they sit with their teachers and they get the remediation, working through practices, etc. We also have a practice walkthrough tomorrow before testing begins to prepare our students for the overall environment for GMAS. So one thing that we targeted our teachers to do, and what you guys can do at home, there is a website, GA Experience Online, that you can get online and you can see the structure of the assessments. You can practice with the technology tools. There are a lot of sample questions, and there are even study guides for kids. So some examples of tools that the kids can use on this platform are below. They can, some of them even like to change the pointer. You can change the size of it, the color of it. There's a cross off. So say for instance, you are taking a test and you say, hey, I know that's not the answer. So you can cancel that question or cancel that answer so you can kind of make an educated guess. There's a highlighter feature. So as you're reading and you say, hey, that might be something useful, you can highlight a part of that passage. There's a notepad for you to be able to take notes within the test question. There's a magnifier, and those are for our kids that have visual impairments. And then there's a line guide to help you track the part of text that you're reading. So I know when I was growing up, hey, we use our finger, but they have a line guide on the computer to be able to do that. And then there's also a masking tool. The masking tool blocks out areas of text so that you can focus particularly on the line that you're reading. So some tips for before the test: make sure your student gets a lot of rest before the night before. Eat a nutritious breakfast before the test and avoid those high sugar foods. We expect them to wear comfortable layered clothing because we don't know what the testing environment as far as the temperature would be. And it's easy to take off and try to put on. Arrive to school on time so they're not rushed. So if they're here early, they can relax, get to their location on time so they're not nervous before they get to their location. Hydrate and relax. And we really push this on our kids because at the end of the day, the results of the test help the teachers plan for their education. So obviously we want to see their growth, but we are more focused on what we can do to better suit your students and make adjustments to our instruction in the future. Some tips for your students during the test: we want them to read the questions carefully and understand the directions before starting. So during the test, the administrator who is administering the test will read the prompts or read the directions. And if your student does not understand it, please ask them to speak up, because if they don't understand it, someone else may not as well. Ask questions about the directions that are unclear. Read the entire question or story before answering. Read all of your answer choices before selecting an answer. If you're not sure, eliminate answers that you know are wrong before you make a guess. And that tool that we talked about earlier will be great for that area right there. Think about your answers and don't second guess. Your first one is usually the right one. Trust your gut. Trust your gut. And don't gauge your efforts on people finishing before you. Sometimes people who take the longest probably do the best because they're not rushing through it. They're going through, make sure they're reading it carefully, reading it 2-3 times before answering. And the biggest thing for your kids, this is your time to shine. So we are excited about GMAS because we want our students to be able to show us how much they've learned and they grew. And we want to see their growth. So again, it is not a time to be nervous about anything. We know our kids are growing. We just want them to show their growth so we can brag on them, because we believe that Mason Creek is the best school. Some reminders for parents: make sure your child is on time. The unfortunate thing is once we begin the test, students who are tardy cannot enter the testing session once it's begun. So most likely that child will have to come back on the makeup day. Make sure your child gets a good night's rest, and breakfast is important. Students must remain in the testing environment until the assessment is completed. So there's no checking out once your kid is in that testing environment. And the reason why we do that is because we don't want a lot of movement or going into classrooms, interrupting that testing environment, and impacting other students that are there. So please If you come to the front office and ask, can your student be checked out? Please be mindful that they may be in a testing session where others are still testing. And there are no volunteers or lunch visitors permitted during the testing window. Also, attendance is important, so try to make every effort to schedule appointments outside of the testing window. We understand that things do come up, and that's why we have those makeup days for that. One of the biggest things that we work on as far as GMAS to make sure we are within the guidelines is that our accommodations. Because students with a 504 IEP or TPC, and the TPC is for English language learners, they will receive accommodations based on whatever documents that are presented. So for example, if a kid has a visual issue, then there will be enlarged font. They can choose their colors. If they have a color blindness type of issue, they can have text to speech, etc. Some other ones include the scheduling and the setting, and that is extended time. Say, for instance, they might need more additional time to complete that assessment. They may have small group. They might have a preferential seating issue, or they want to sit closer to a clock or closer to the front of class or closer to a teacher. And again, if you would like to, that website that I referred to earlier is www.gaexperienceonline.com, and it has a lot of resources for you. Cell phones, electronic devices, no matter their cell phones, smartwatches, tablets, whatever, they are not allowed in the testing room. So please remind your students on that. They will be stored in the lockers once they arrive at school. There will be multiple reminders, but consequences will be given to students who bring electronic devices into the testing area. And the reason why this is very important, because if a cell phone rings, again, that is, it impacts the learners that are trying to take that assessment. And if you look to the right, I'm gonna read this verbatim. The use or intended use of an electronic device to look up correct answers, take pictures of test materials, or share information with others will invalidate a student's test score. So we want to make sure all of those things are not inside of the room. I am done with this presentation. Thank you guys for being here. And now we will open up the floor for questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you guys, so that I can answer questions, because I've been looking and staring at a PowerPoint this entire time. So give me a sec. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Owens. Just a reminder to everybody, if you have questions after the fact, or if you're watching the recording of this, you can always email Mr. Owens or myself, and we will definitely get an answer to you. Owens, you can go ahead and stop recording.